Captain Jake Morrison stood at the window of his ship looking out at the stars. He had been waiting for this moment his whole life. The Terra Nova was Earth's newest exploration ship, and Jake was proud to be its captain. His crew was the best Earth had to offer. They were ready for anything. Then the sky changed. A massive shadow fell across their ship. Jake looked up and saw something that made his heart skip a beat. An alien ship was appearing right above them. It was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. The ship was white and silver, with strange symbols glowing along its sides. It looked like it could crush the Terra Nova without even trying. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. "We're getting a signal from the alien ship." Jake walked to the center of the bridge. His hands were shaking a little, but he tried to stay calm. "Put it on screen," he said. The main screen lit up, and Jake found himself looking at something he had never seen before. The alien was tall and thin, with skin that looked like crystal. Its eyes were bright blue and seemed to glow. When it moved, light danced across its body like water. "I am High Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien said. Its voice was cold and proud. "Your primitive species will bow before our might. We have conquered 1,000 worlds with our superior technology and perfect tactics." Jake looked around at his crew. Dr. Lisa Campbell, their science officer, was taking notes as fast as she could. Engineer Tony Martinez was checking his instruments. They all looked scared but determined. "We are honored to meet you," Jake said, trying to sound polite. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. We come in peace." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace? Your species knows nothing of peace. You wage war against each other like animals. You destroy your own planet with pollution and greed. You are nothing but savages who have barely learned to leave your world." Jake felt his anger rising, but he kept his voice calm. "We may not be perfect, but we're learning. We're trying to be better." "Better?" Vexthal's crystal face twisted into what looked like a sneer. "You will never be better. You will serve the Empire, or you will be destroyed. Those are your only choices." The alien pressed something on his side, and suddenly the screen changed. They could see Earth from space, beautiful and blue. Then they saw another ship, much smaller than the one above them. It was pointing some kind of weapon at a large rock floating in space. "Watch and learn," Vexthal said. A beam of bright light shot from the ship. When it hit the rock simply disappeared. There was no explosion, no debris. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. "Our plasma cannons can destroy anything," Vexthal continued. "Planets, moons, entire star systems. Your pathetic weapons cannot stop us. Your primitive shields are useless against our power." Jake's crew watched in silence. They had never seen anything like it. Their own weapons seemed like toys compared to what they had just witnessed. "You have 72 hours to surrender," Vexthal announced. "Send your leaders to bow before the Empire. Accept your place as our servants. If you refuse, we will demonstrate our power on your cities." The communication ended and the bridge fell silent. Jake could hear his crew breathing, could feel their fear. They were facing something beyond their understanding, something that could wipe them out without effort. "Captain," Dr. Campbell said quietly, "their technology is incredible. That weapon they showed us, it's beyond anything we've ever imagined." "I know," Jake replied. "But there's something strange about them." "What do you mean?" asked Tony Martinez. Jake thought for a moment. "They're too confident, too sure of themselves. They act like they've never faced a real challenge before." Amy Rodriguez nodded. "They keep calling us primitive, but they don't really know anything about us. They're making assumptions." "Exactly," Jake said. "They think they know everything about humans just by looking at us. But they don't understand what makes us different." Dr. Campbell looked confused. "Different how?" Jake smiled for the first time since the aliens had appeared. "They're logical. Everything they do follows rules and patterns. They've conquered 1,000 worlds probably because every species they met thought the same way they do. But humans—" "Don't think like that," Tony said, beginning to understand. "No, we don't," Jake agreed. "We're messy. we're unpredictable. We make mistakes and learn from them. We create things that shouldn't work but do. We survive things that should kill us. He walked to the communications station. Amy, I want you to send a message to Earth. Tell them about our visitors. Tell them we need Admiral Harrison and the Mars base to start Operation Confusion. Operation Confusion? Amy asked. Something I've been thinking about for years, Jake said. What if we ever met aliens who thought they were better than us? How would we prove them wrong? The crew looked at him with new hope. They didn't understand his plan yet, but they trusted their captain. Sir, Tony said, what if your plan doesn't work? What if we really are as primitive as they think? Jake looked out at the alien ship hanging in space above them. Then we'll go down fighting. But I don't think it will come to that. These aliens have made one big mistake. What's that? Dr. Campbell asked. Jake's smile grew wider. They underestimated humanity. They think being logical and powerful makes them superior. But they've never met a species that turns disadvantages into advantages. They've never faced humans who refuse to play by the rules. He turned to his crew. Get ready, everyone. We're about to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of. By the time we're done, the mighty Zephyrian Empire is going to look like a bunch of amateurs. Outside the window, the alien ship continued to hover, confident in its power. Inside the Terra Nova, humanity was preparing to teach the galaxy's most arrogant species a lesson they would never forget. Commander Amy Rodriguez floated in the control room of Mars Base Alpha, watching the screens that showed Earth and the alien ship above it. She had received Captain Morrison's message 12 hours ago, and since then she had been working non-stop on Operation Confusion. Status report, she called out to her team. All systems ready, Commander, replied Engineer Tony Martinez, who had been transferred to Mars just 2 months earlier. The fake weapon displays are in position around Earth's orbit. The dummy nuclear silos are broadcasting the signals you requested, Amy nodded. The plan was simple but brilliant. They would make the Zephyrians think humanity was even more primitive than they already believed, while secretly gathering intelligence on the alien technology. Dr. Karen Wells looked up from her bank of computers. I've been analyzing the energy patterns from their ship, she said. Every time they activate their weapons or shields, they send out signals. I'm starting to understand how their technology works. How long until you can crack their systems? Amy asked. Give me 24 hours, Karen replied. Maybe less. Their technology is advanced, but it follows very predictable patterns. They don't seem to believe in security through confusion. Amy smiled. Of course they don't. They're too logical for that. On Earth, the Zephyrians had sent down a small shuttle to inspect humanity's defenses. High Commander Vexel himself had come to see what the humans were capable of. He stood in a military base in Nevada, surrounded by what appeared to be Earth's most advanced weapons. General Pete Harrison led the tour, acting nervous and intimidated. These are our best kinetic weapons, he said, pointing to what looked like large metal tubes. They can shoot metal projectiles at very high speeds. Vexel examined the weapons with obvious amusement. Kinetic weapons? You still throw rocks at your enemies? Well, very fast rocks, Pete replied, trying to sound proud but failing. The alien moved to the next display, where several missiles stood ready for launch. And these? Nuclear weapons? Pete said quietly. They can destroy entire cities? Nuclear? Vexel's crystal face showed what might have been pity. You still use atomic fission? We mastered fusion power 10,000 years ago. Your entire nuclear arsenal could not scratch our smallest ship. What the alien didn't see was the small device hidden in Pete's jacket. It was recording everything, analyzing the alien's technology, and sending the data back to Dr. Wells on Mars. Meanwhile, Sergeant Danny Brooks was leading a group of soldiers in what appeared to be a training exercise. They marched in formation, carrying what looked like primitive weapons. The Zephyrians watched from their shuttle, probably making notes about humanity's pathetic military capabilities, but Danny's soldiers weren't really training. They were positioning themselves around the alien shuttle, placing tiny sensors that would monitor every signal the ship sent out. The aliens, confident in their superiority, never suspected that the primitive humans were actually studying them back on Mars. Amy received a coded message from Earth. The Zephyrians had demanded to see Earth's most precious resources as a form of tribute. Captain Morrison had a special surprise prepared for them. "They're really going to give them that?" Tony asked, reading the message over Amy's shoulder. "Jake knows what he's doing," Amy replied. "Remember, the goal is to make them think we're harmless while we figure out how to beat them." On Earth, the meeting was taking place in the United Nations building. World leaders sat around a large table, trying to look scared and defeated. High Commander Vexthal stood at the head of the table, his crystal form glowing with satisfaction. "Your planet will provide tribute to the Empire," he announced. "Gold, rare metals, and your most valuable resources. This is the price of your continued existence." Captain Morrison stood and bowed respectfully. "Of course, High Commander. We have prepared Earth's most precious resources for you." He gestured to an aide who brought forward a simple wooden box. Morrison opened it with great ceremony, revealing its contents to the alien leader. Inside the box were bottle caps, paper, clips, rubber bands, and a few colorful marbles. "These represent the height of human achievement," Morrison said with a completely straight face. "The bottle caps are made from our finest metals. The paper clips demonstrate our mastery of metallurgy. The rubber bands show our understanding of elastic materials. And the marbles are crafted from our most beautiful stones." Vexthal stared at the contents of the box. His logical mind told him that these items were worthless, but his arrogance wouldn't let him admit that he didn't understand their value. If humans considered them precious, there must be something important about them that he was missing. "These will be acceptable," he said finally. Taking the box as if it contained the crown jewels of Earth. Amy watched the whole scene through a hidden camera feed and had to cover her mouth to keep from laughing out loud. The most advanced species in the galaxy had just accepted trash as tribute because they were too proud to admit they didn't understand it. "Commander," Dr. Wells called out excitedly, "I've got it. I've cracked their communication system." Amy rushed to Coren's station. "What did you find?" "Their entire technology is based on logical hierarchies," Coren explained. "Every system has a master control that gives orders to subsystems. If you can confuse the master control, the whole system breaks down. How do we confuse it?" Coren grinned. "We give it problems that don't have logical solutions. We make it try to understand human behavior." Amy understood immediately. Operation Confusion just got a lot more interesting. Over the next few hours, Amy's team worked to implement their plan. They created false signals that would make the Zephyrian computers think humans were using impossible technology. They sent out energy patterns that followed no logical rules, designed to drive the alien analysis systems crazy. On Earth, more Zephyrian shuttles arrived to study human civilization. They visited cities, factories, and farms, making careful notes about humanity's capabilities. What they saw confirmed their beliefs. Humans were primitive, disorganized, and no threat to the Empire, but they didn't see the real preparations happening beneath their notice. In secret bases around the world, humanity's best scientists were working around the clock to understand and counter alien technology. In hidden facilities, engineers were building weapons that would make the Zephyrians' PLASMA cannons look like toys. Amy received the final piece of good news just as her shift was ending. Captain Morrison had successfully convinced the Zephyrians to accept a challenge, a series of competitions to prove which species was truly superior. "They agreed to compete with us?" Tony asked in amazement. "Their arrogance is their weakness," Amy replied. "They're so sure they're better than us that they can't resist the chance to prove it." She looked at the data streaming in from Earth, thousands of hours of alien technology analysis, behavioral patterns, and tactical information. The Zephyrians thought they were studying humanity, but humans were learning everything about them. "Phase 2 complete," she announced to her team. "Now we move to Phase 3. Time to show these aliens what happens when you underestimate humanity." On the screens around her, the alien ships continued their patrol of Earth's orbit completely, unaware that their every move was being watched, analyzed, and countered by the primitive species they had come to conquer. High Commander Vexful sat in his private chamber aboard the Zephyrian flagship, studying the data his scouts had collected about Earth. Everything confirmed what he had expected. Humans were primitive, chaotic, and completely predictable in their inferiority. Their weapons were laughably simple, their technology was thousands of years behind the Empire's, and their military tactics were barely above animal level. So why did he feel uneasy? The feeling made no logical sense. His species had conquered civilizations far more advanced than humanity. The Corvan Republic had possessed energy shields that could deflect starlight. The Threx Federation had built ships that could travel through solid matter. Yet both had fallen to Zephyrian logic and planning within weeks. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. "High Commander," came the voice of his aide, "the humans have sent another communication." "Put it through," Vexful replied, expecting another plea for mercy. Instead, he saw Captain Morrison's face on the screen. The human was smiling, which struck Vexful as odd behavior for someone about to be conquered. "High Commander," Morrison said, "I've been thinking about our situation. You claim your species is superior to ours in every way. This is not a claim," Vexful replied coldly. "It is a fact proven across 1,000 worlds." "Then you wouldn't mind proving it one more time," Morrison continued. "Your species values logic and efficiency, correct? Surely you can defeat us in a simple contest of skills." Vexful's crystal features brightened with interest. "What kind of contest?" "Whatever you prefer," Morrison said with a shrug. "Military tactics, technology, problem solving? Pick any area where you think you're superior, and we'll compete. When you win, we'll surrender immediately. No fighting, no destruction, just a peaceful transition." The alien commander considered this. It was an opportunity to demonstrate Zephyrian superiority without wasting energy on a pointless war. His superiors would be impressed by his efficiency. "Very well," he said. "We will begin with military tactics. I will personally face your best strategic mind." "Excellent," Morrison replied. "I'll arrange everything." 2 hours later, Vexthel found himself in a conference room on his ship, facing a human across a tactical display table. The human was Colonel Rick Gavis, who looked completely relaxed despite facing the Empire's greatest military genius. "The rules are simple," Morrison explained. "You'll each command a fleet in a simulated battle. The computer will calculate the results based on your tactical decisions." Vexthel nodded. He had won over 300 such simulations without a single defeat. His logical mind could calculate thousands of variables simultaneously, predicting every possible enemy move. The simulation began. Vexthel deployed his forces in the classic Zephyrian formation, designed through millennia of warfare. His ships moved in perfect geometric patterns, each unit supporting the others in a web of overlapping fields of fire. Rick Davis looked at the display for a moment, then started moving his ships. Vexthel watched in confusion as the human fleet scattered in what appeared to be random directions. Some ships moved toward the enemy, others retreated, and still others moved in circles. "What is your strategy?" Vexthel asked, genuinely puzzled. "Strategy?" Rick scratched his head. "I don't know. That ship looks lonely over there, so I'm sending some friends to keep it company." Vexthel's logical mind reeled. Keep it company? That made no tactical sense whatsoever. He quickly adapted his formation to take advantage of the human's obvious mistake, concentrating his forces to destroy the isolated enemy ships. But when his fleet moved to attack, the lonely ship suddenly wasn't alone anymore. Somehow, without Vexthel noticing, Rick had positioned other ships nearby. The trap closed around the Zephyrian forces before the alien commander realized what was happening. "Lucky," Vexthel muttered and reset the simulation. The second battle went the same way. Rick made decisions that defied all logic, moving ships based on what he called gut feelings and hunches. When Vexthel asked why he had moved a particular squadron, Rick replied, "I like the way those ships look together." Yet somehow, Rick won again. By the fifth simulation, Vexthel was experiencing something he had never felt before: panic. Every time he thought he understood Rick's pattern, the human would do something completely different. There was no pattern, no logic, no predictable sequence of moves. How are you doing this? Vexthel demanded after his seventh consecutive defeat. Rick shrugged. I don't really know. I just do what feels right. Dr. Helen Foster, who had been watching from the sidelines, stepped forward. Commander Vexthel, may I explain something? The alien nodded, desperate for any logical explanation. Your species is very intelligent, Helen said. You can calculate probabilities, predict outcomes, and plan perfect strategies. But you always assume your enemy will act logically too. Of course they will, Vexthel replied. Any intelligent being would choose the most efficient course of action. But humans don't always choose the most efficient path, Helen continued. Sometimes we do things because they're fun, or because we're curious, or because we have a feeling. We make mistakes, but we also make discoveries that pure logic would never find. Vexthel stared at her. You're saying your species is superior because you're illogical? Not superior, Helen corrected. Different. Your logical mind is trying to predict Rick's moves, but Rick doesn't know what he's going to do until he does. How can you predict something that hasn't been decided yet? The alien commander looked back at the tactical display where Rick had somehow arranged his ships to form a smiley face while simultaneously destroying the Zephyrian fleet. It was tactically brilliant and completely absurd at the same time. This is impossible, Vexthel said weakly. Want to try the technology competition next? Morrison asked cheerfully. An hour later, Vexthel watched in horror as a human engineer named Frank Johnson demonstrated a device that appeared to be held together with metal tape and spare parts. The machine hummed and sparked, looking like it might explode at any moment. This is your advanced technology? Vexthel asked. Advanced? Frank laughed. Nah, I built this yesterday from stuff I found in the garage. It's just a basic gravity manipulator. A what? Frank pressed a button, and a nearby chair began floating in the air. See? Gravity manipulation? Pretty simple, really. I got the idea from watching how your ships move. Vexthel's mind went blank. Gravity manipulation was theoretical technology that the Empire had been trying to develop for centuries. The humans had built a working model from spare parts. How is this possible? He whispered. Well, Frank said, scratching his chin, I figured if you guys could do it, it couldn't be that hard. So I just tried different things until something worked. Took me about 6 hours. Captain Morrison watched as the High Commander of the Zephyrian Empire slowly sank into his chair, his crystal face showing what could only be described as complete bewilderment. Should we try the problem-solving competition next? Morrison asked gently. Vexthel looked up at him with something that might have been fear. Captain Morrison, I must ask you something, and I require an honest answer. Of course. Are humans actually the primitive species we believed you to be? Morrison smiled. That depends on how you define primitive. We're definitely not as advanced as you in many ways. But we've learned something your species apparently hasn't. What? Sometimes the best solution isn't the logical one. Sometimes? You have to break the rules to find the answer. And sometimes being unpredictable is the greatest advantage of all. Vexthel stared at the floating chair, then at Rick Davis, who was now arranging his tactical display ships to spell out words. Everything he had believed about superiority and logic was crumbling around him. I think, he said slowly, that I may have made a serious error in judgment. High Commander Vexthel paced around his private chamber, his crystal form flickering with confusion and anger. 3 days had passed since the competitions began, and his species had lost every single challenge to the humans. It made no logical sense. The tactical competition had been a disaster. Colonel Rick Davis had defeated every Zephyrian commander by doing things that shouldn't work. The technology demonstrations had been even worse. Humans kept showing devices that looked like children's toys but performed better than the Empire's most advanced equipment. But the worst defeat had come in the physical endurance test. Lieutenant Commander Nick Taylor had faced the Empire's strongest warrior in a contest of strength and stamina. The Zephyrian champion, built like a mountain and trained from birth for combat, should have won easily. Instead, Nick had used techniques that violated every principle of efficient movement. He moved in strange patterns, wasted energy on unnecessary actions, and took breaks to joke with the audience. Yet somehow he had outlasted the alien champion, who collapsed from exhaustion while Nick was still smiling and making jokes. "It's impossible," Vexthel muttered to himself. "We are the superior species. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We cannot be defeated by primitives." A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. "High Commander," came his aide's voice, "the humans have requested one final competition." Vexthel's crystal features darkened. "What now?" "They wish to compete in technological innovation. They say it will be the ultimate test of superiority." The alien commander laughed bitterly. "At least this. We cannot lose. Our technology is thousands of years ahead of theirs. Send word that I accept." An hour later, Vexthel stood in a large testing facility that the humans had prepared. On one side of the room sat the Empire's latest creation, a planet-cracking device that represented the pinnacle of Zephyrian engineering. The machine was beautiful in its perfection, every component designed with mathematical precision. On the other side of the room, Chief Engineer Frank Johnson stood next to what appeared to be a collection of garbage. His device was held together with metal tape, wire, and what looked like parts from a kitchen appliance. It hummed and sparked, looking ready to fall apart at any moment. "This is your entry?" Vexthel asked, hardly believing what he was seeing. "Yep," Frank replied cheerfully. "Built her myself from spare parts. She's not pretty, but she works." Captain Morrison stepped forward. "The rules are simple. Both devices will be tested against the same target. Whichever performs better wins." Vexthel nodded confidently. The human device looked like something a child might build in school. There was no way it could compete with Zephyrian engineering. The target was a large asteroid that had been brought to Earth's orbit for the test. Both devices would fire at it simultaneously, and the results would be measured. "Begin," Morrison announced. The Zephyrian device activated with perfect precision. Energy flowed through its systems in calculated patterns, building to the exact power level needed to destroy the target. A brilliant beam of light shot out, striking the asteroid and reducing it to dust in seconds. Vexthel smiled with satisfaction. As expected, perfect efficiency, perfect results. Then Frank's device fired. The beam that emerged was not the clean, precise energy of the Zephyrian weapon. It was chaotic, swirling with colors that shouldn't exist, crackling with power that seemed to bend the laws of physics. When it hit the asteroid's remains, something incredible happened. The dust reformed into a perfect sphere of solid metal. "What did you do?" Vexthel whispered. Frank scratched his head. "Well, destroying things is easy. Any idiot can blow stuff up. But putting it back together, making it better than it was before, that's the real trick." Dr. Linda Clark stepped forward with a tablet full of readings. "The reformed asteroid is now composed of materials that don't exist in nature. It's stronger than anything we've ever seen, and it's generating its own energy field." Vexthel stared at the impossible sphere floating. "In space, this violates every law of physics." "Maybe your laws," Frank said with a shrug. "We've been working on new laws. The old ones were too limiting." The alien commander turned to Captain Morrison. "How is this possible? Your species has barely achieved spaceflight. You use primitive nuclear weapons and kinetic projectiles. You should not be able to create technology that surpasses ours." Morrison smiled. "You're right. We shouldn't be able to. According to logic, we're too primitive. But we've learned something important over the years." "What?" "Logic is just one way of thinking. It's very useful, but it's not the only way. Sometimes you have to think outside the box, try things that shouldn't work, and see what happens." Dr. Linda Clark joined the conversation. "Your species perfected existing knowledge. You took what you knew and made it better through careful improvement. That's impressive, but it has limits." "What limits?" Vexthel asked. You can only improve something so much before you hit a wall, Linda explained. To break through that wall, you need to think differently. You need to question everything, even the things that seem obviously true. Frank held up his strange device. This thing works because I didn't know it was impossible. I saw your ships bending space and time, and I thought, that's neat, but what if we could do it better? So I tried. But you have no advanced education in physics, Vexthel protested. You cannot understand the principles involved. Maybe not, Frank admitted, but I understand something else. I understand that the universe is bigger and stranger than any of us realize. Just because something hasn't been done before doesn't mean it can't be done. Vexthel looked around at the humans surrounding him. They were all smiling, not with the arrogance he expected from a superior species, but with genuine friendliness. Even after demonstrating their incredible abilities, they didn't seem to think they were better than anyone else. I don't understand, he said finally. You have technology that surpasses ours. You have tactics that defeat our best minds. You have abilities that should be impossible. Yet you pretend to be primitive. Captain Morrison's expression grew serious. We're not pretending, High Commander. We really are primitive in many ways. We make mistakes, we fight among ourselves, we destroy things we should protect. But we also learn from our mistakes, and we never stop trying to be better. Your species has achieved great things through logic and order, Dr. Clark added. That's, admirable. But you've also become limited by that same logic? You can't imagine solutions that don't fit your understanding of how things should work. Vexthel thought about this. It was true that Zephyrian science had progressed very slowly in recent centuries. They had perfected their existing technology, but they hadn't made any real breakthroughs in thousands of years. Are you saying that chaos is superior to order? He asked. Not superior, Morrison replied. Different. Chaos and order both have their place. The trick is knowing when to use each one, Frank nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. Sometimes you need careful planning and logical thinking. But sometimes you need to throw logic out the window and try something crazy. And sometimes, added Rick Davis, who had been watching quietly, you need to do both at the same time. Vexthel looked at the reformed asteroid still floating in space, its impossible energy field glowing softly. The humans had not just defeated Zephyrian technology, they had demonstrated possibilities that the Empire had never even imagined. High Commander, Morrison said gently, we're not your enemies. We don't want to conquer you or destroy your Empire. We just want to be left alone to grow and learn in our own way. But perhaps, Dr. Clark added, we could also learn from each other. Your logic and our chaos, your order and our creativity. Imagine what we could accomplish together. For the first time in his life, High Commander Vexthel of the Zephyrian Empire faced a possibility that his logical mind had never considered. Maybe superiority wasn't about being better than everyone else. Maybe it was about finding new ways. To work together, the thought terrified and excited him in equal measure. High Commander Vexthel stood in his command center, staring at the screens showing Earth below. For the first time in his long military career, he didn't know what to do. The humans had defeated him in every possible way, yet they sat patiently, waiting for his decision. His aide approached nervously. High Commander, the Fleet Admiral is demanding a status report. The other commanders want to know when we will begin the invasion. Vexthel turned away from the screens. Tell them there will be no invasion. Sir? You heard me. Send word to the fleet. We are not invading Earth. The aide's crystal face showed confusion. But, sir, our orders were clear. Conquer or destroy. All primitive species. That's the problem, Vexthel said quietly. The humans aren't primitive. We just didn't understand what we were looking at. Before the aide could respond, Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication system. High Commander, could you join us in the conference room? We have something to show you. Vexthel made his way to the room where the humans were waiting. Morrison stood at the head of the table with Admiral Pete Harrison and Dr. Linda Clark. They all looked serious, but not angry. Please sit down, Morrison said. Vexthel took his seat, wondering what new surprise the humans had prepared. We've been monitoring your communications, Morrison began. The alien commander's form flickered with alarm. That's impossible. Our encryption is unbreakable. Not to us, Dr. Clark said gently. We've been listening to everything since you arrived. Every strategy meeting, every report to your superiors, every moment of panic when you realized we weren't what you expected. Morrison activated a holographic display. We've recorded all of it. Your conversations about how primitive we are, your plans to enslave us, your growing confusion when we kept beating you. Vexthel watched in horror as his own words played. Back, he heard himself calling humans barely evolved animals and pathetic creatures. He saw himself growing more desperate with each defeat, unable to understand how his superior species could lose to such primitives. Why are you showing me this? He asked. Because, Morrison said, this recording is currently being broadcast to every world in the Zephyrian Empire. The alien commander's crystal form went completely white. You're doing what? Every species you've conquered is watching right now, Admiral Harrison explained. They're seeing the mighty Zephyrian Empire being outsmarted by a species you claimed was worthless. Dr. Clark pulled up more displays. We're also showing them this. The screens filled with images of human technology. Frank Johnson's Impossible. Devices, Rick Davis's chaotic military tactics, and dozens of other innovations that defied Zephyrian understanding. The other species are learning that you're not invincible, Morrison continued. They're seeing that different ways of thinking can be just as valid as yours. Vexthel slumped in his chair. You're destroying the Empire. No, Morrison said. Firmly, we're changing it. The Empire was built on the idea that one way of thinking was better than all others. But that's not true, is it? Before Vexthel could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. His aide rushed into the room, his crystal form flickering with panic. Hi, Commander, we're receiving reports from across the Empire. The conquered worlds are in rebellion. They're using human tactics and technology designs. What? Vexthel stood up quickly. The Corvan Republic has declared independence. They're using something they call chaotic defense patterns that our fleets can't predict. The Threx Federation has rebuilt their ships with human-inspired modifications that make them faster than ours. Morrison smiled sadly. We tried to warn you. When you base your power on the belief that you're superior to everyone else, what happens when someone proves you're not? More reports flooded in. World after world was breaking free from Zephyrian control. The Empire's rigid military structure, designed for logical warfare, couldn't handle the new chaotic tactics spreading across the galaxy. Centuries of conquest undone in days, Vexthel whispered. It doesn't have to be, Dr. Clark said. The Empire could survive this, but it would have to change. Change how? Morrison leaned forward. Stop trying to control everyone. Start learning from them instead. You have incredible technology and organizational skills. Other species have different strengths. Imagine what you could accomplish if you worked together instead of dominating. Vexthel looked at the humans around him. They had completely destroyed his fleet's ability to conquer Earth, broadcast his humiliation across the galaxy, and caused the collapse of the Empire. Yet they were offering him a way to save face. Why would you help us? He asked. Because, Morrison said, we don't want to rule the galaxy any more than we want to be ruled by it. We just want to be left alone to grow and learn. But if the Empire falls completely, there will be chaos and war. Millions will die, Admiral Harrison nodded. Better to have a reformed empire that respects other species than no empire at all. Another alarm sounded. This time, Vexthel's aide looked even more panicked. High Commander, Fleet Admiral Zixter is demanding your immediate surrender. He says you failed the Empire and will be replaced. Vexthel laughed. It was a strange sound, like crystal bells breaking. Of course he is. The old ways are failing, so they want to try more of the same. He looked at Morrison. What do you suggest? Talk to your people, Morrison said. Not the fleet admiral, not the high command. Talk to the regular Zephyrians who make the Empire work. Ask them if they want to keep fighting wars they can't win, or if they want to try something new, and if they choose war. Morrison's expression grew serious. Then we'll defend ourselves, and we'll keep helping other species defend themselves too. The galaxy is big enough for everyone, but only if everyone agrees to share it. Vexthel stood up slowly. I need to think about this. Take all the time you need, Morrison said. But remember, the whole galaxy is watching now. Whatever you decide will be seen by everyone. As Vexthel left the room, he passed by a window showing Earth below. The blue and white planet looked so peaceful, so small. It was hard to believe that this tiny world had just changed the fate of the entire galaxy. In his chamber, Vexthel activated his personal communicator. Instead of calling the fleet admiral, he opened a channel to the entire Zephyrian Empire. People of Zephyria, he began, I have something to tell you. We have encountered a species that has taught us something important about ourselves. Across the galaxy, Zephyrians stopped what they were doing to listen. We believed we were superior, because we were logical and efficient. But we forgot that there are many different kinds of intelligence, many different ways of solving problems. The humans have shown us that our way is not the only way. He paused, thinking of Rick Davis's impossible tactics and Frank Johnson's chaotic inventions. I propose that we try something new. Instead of conquering other species, let's learn from them. Instead of forcing our ways on others, let's find ways to work together. The Empire can still exist, but as a partnership of equals, not a hierarchy of masters and slaves. The response was immediate. Some Zephyrians were outraged, calling him a traitor. But others were curious, even excited. They had grown tired of endless wars and rigid control. Within hours, the Empire was splitting into factions. Some wanted to continue the old ways, but more and more were choosing change. On Earth, Captain Morrison watched the broadcast with satisfaction. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had defeated a galactic empire without firing a single shot. Think it will work? Admiral Harrison asked. It's working already, Morrison replied. Look at the rebellion reports. Species that were conquered centuries ago are suddenly finding their courage. The Empire's power was based on fear and the belief that resistance was hopeless. Now they know it's not. Dr. Clark joined them at the observation deck. The best part is, we didn't have to become conquerors ourselves. We just had to prove that different doesn't mean inferior, Morrison nodded. And now the galaxy will have to learn to live with diversity instead of uniformity. It won't be easy, but it will be better. Outside the window, Zephyrian ships were leaving Earth's orbit. Some were heading back to their homeworlds to join the growing reform movement. Others were going to fight against the changes. But change was coming whether they liked it or not. The humans had opened a door that could never be closed again. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in space, a small wooden box full of bottle caps was still being treated as a precious treasure. Because nobody wanted to admit they didn't understand its value,